Thanks for staying up later. David Crosby is with us. On January 16th, he went into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a member of the Byrds, and you might make it a double because it's likely that sometime down the road, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, however we want to refer to it, would get in as well, so you'd be in under two banners.
Yep, I might even be the first one. He said, hopefully.
What is the musical significance, in your view, of the Byrds? What's their slot in history?
Well, we were a synthesis band. We were the first American rock and roll band to answer the British invasion and be affected by it. You know, the Beach Boys had already set their style before any of that happened. We were the first reaction to it. And we all came out of, McGuinn and Hillman and I, and Gene Clark also, came out of folk music. So we were into more than just three-chord changes on a guitar. We're into folk music kind of changes, and again, good words, lyrics.
Classic example, of course, the biggest Byrds hit, Mr. Tambourine Man, where you had the energy and an electric sound that seemed to borrow from a British group like the Beatles, for example.
There was definitely influence.
And the folk influence, obviously, written by Dylan.
Yeah, it was definitely influenced by the Beatles. We thought the Beatles, and we probably still do. I think if you asked all of us, who was the best of all, we would probably all still say the Beatles.
Hello. That man on the end is Jim McGuinn. The one playing bass is Chris Hillman. The one playing the drums is Michael Clark. And I'm David Crosby. And when we are together, they call us the Byrds.
Some members of the Byrds said at that time that they were disenchanted with you and felt you were hard to get along with.
I was.
Your version of the main reason why you left the Byrds is that they weren't giving you a chance to spread your wings musically, that you were writing what you thought were good songs and you were getting aced out of slots on records.
Well, I think there was some of both. I was a young kid and I was, possessed of a large and blossoming ego, and I thought, that I should be, given more attention. But the truth was, my real position in that group was wingman to Roger. The Byrds essentially...
To Roger McGuinn.
...was, led by and focused on Roger McGuinn, and properly so. That's how it worked. And that's, had I been content with that, I probably would have stayed with it.
And one outward example of that is you couldn't get Triad onto, which album was it, the Notorious Byrd Brothers? Was that the one that...
Well, yeah, it didn't go on the record, but we did cut it, and we cut it very well, actually. I heard it later, and we did a very good cut of it. I don't think it was really a central thing to the issue. I think I told people that afterwards to make me look good.
What I was getting at is this, though. There's a release of the Byrds' greatest hits, or whatever the compilation is called.
The box set?
A new CD, yeah. And Triad is on there.
Yeah,
so it's kind of a nice resolution to the story.
Yeah. That box set, I think, is a nice resolution to a lot of things. We put a lot of effort into it, particularly Roger put a lot of effort into it, and it shows... most of the facets that are interesting about that band, its different incarnations.
Now, how about Crosby, Stills, and Nash? Where's their slot?
We did something, again, that was a lucky piece of timing. At that time, it was the year of the guitar player. It was Clapton and Hendrix and Jimmy Page. And everybody was just discovering the real power of the electric guitar. And we came out in the middle of all of that with acoustic guitars and three-part harmony. Really good three-part, he said modestly.
They are one person, they are two alone, they are three together, they are for each other.
The story goes that CS&N were formed one day at Joni Mitchell's house. Does that make for a good story, or is it actually on the money?
You know, I can't remember whether it was Joni's house or Cass's house. Cass Elliot was also a very close friend of ours and is the one who introduced Graham and I. And I'm not sure if it happened at Joni's or Cass's. What happened was Stephen and I had been hanging out for a while. I was out of the Byrds, and Stephen's Springfield had kind of fallen apart around his ears, and we liked each other. We were both brash, young, singer-songwriters looking for some way to bust loose. And we were singing some songs together, his and mine. And we heard Nash in the Hollies and said, ooh, ooh, because you could hardly miss it, Here was this voice on the top going, King Midas in reverse. And he said, ooh, oh, ooh, that boy can do it. And so Cass, knew him quite well, and I had met him before, so I invited him to come with us someplace, and whether it was Joni's or Cass's, the very first time that we sat down and sang a song, Stephen and I, he said, do that again. And we said, okay, and we did it again. He said, okay, now do it one more time. And the third time we did it, he put the third part on it all the way through perfect, and we went, and we knew exactly what we wanted to do from that point on.
Obviously, part of the mystique of Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young is the reputations that each individual brought and the very distinct public personas of each. You come out of the Byrds, Nash comes out of the Hollies, Stills and Young come out of Buffalo, Springfield, and various other stops along the way. Is there some way to briefly describe what each brought to the mix and why that chemistry of such different and often warring factions worked the way it did?
It's difficult to characterize us, in a thumbnail sketch, because we're all four of us. Each is a very complex guy. We are, as you say, very different human beings. We've managed to bridge that distance, artistically, repeatedly. And in the case of Nash and myself, we became fast friends a long time ago, and we are, aside from my wife, Nash is my best friend in the world. We get along famously, and always have. We live 100 yards from each other. Our families hang out together. We are very, very close. We don't all of us agree, about how to do things. For instance, Stephen and I butt heads constantly. But I love Stephen. And I have been through much too much with him not to care about the man a great deal and have respect for him. But I disagree with him all the time.
You wrote, I believe, that he, at least at one time, I don't know if you still think this, but he didn't give you and other band members the credit they deserved and used to view you guys as sort of his backup singers.
At his worst, yeah. He would treat us with immense disrespect. At his best, he's a great friend. That can vary wildly. Neil is another matter entirely. Stephen, it's a simpler thing. We disagree about how to live our lives. We disagree about, what approach we want to take to the kind of people we are. We disagree on very basic levels. But I think he's one of the best musicians and singer-songwriters in America, and I have made some of the best music of my life with him. And I would never deny that. Neil is as strange as a snake's suspenders. He is he is a wonderful man. He's immensely bright and immensely courageous. He has triumphed over incredible difficulty personally in his life and incredible adversity, and done so with a grace and a courage that I can only be in awe of, okay? And I'm not really trying to overstate the case here. If anything, I'm understating it. He's a tremendously prolific artist. He writes so many songs that he pisses me off. I'm frankly jealous of him.
how do you react to the negative critical assessments, which are by no means the consensus? But I was surprised. Before you came on, I went back and I picked up the Rolling Stone record guide where they have reviews of thousands of albums. And apparently some of the people who reviewed records for Rolling Stone at that time viewed Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young as, I think one term I heard was bubblegum for adults. Slick,
They have done that
soulless.
repeatedly. They called my first solo album mediocre, you know, and mindless. They have apparently never liked us and always sort of had it in for us. And frankly, we don't really give a damn. You have to very early on in your career, if you want to stay sane, realize that a reviewer or a person that writes about you is one person. That's one ticket, one record. That's the way I look at it. They only bought one record. I can't get too excited about them. The people that are the public obviously did think that we had something to say and that we were saying it well, because they reacted to us like crazy. And we have had a career of a longevity, you know, that could only be explained by, you know, there being some quality in what we did. If we were as surface and, you know, and shallow as some of them wrote us up to be, we wouldn't be here still. You know, we would be gone with Alice Cooper's Snake. You know, I mean, we are still here, you know, and we're still filling, you know, auditoriums, and we are still selling records, and that there is only one way you can do that, and that is by writing music that touches somebody.
Teach your children well, 'cause their father's hell did slowly go by, and feed them on your dreams, the one they fix, the one you'll know by. It's been a long time coming, been a long and going to be a long time gone, and there's so much love to make up everywhere you turn. Love we have wasted on the way. So much water moving underneath the bridge. Let the water come and carry us away. Let the water come and carry us away.
If you're wondering, David had a motorcycle accident, and a serious one, which really banged up his left side, but he'll be back dancing before very long, so that's why it's one shoe off and,
Yes,
and one shoe
my
on.
left foot really isn't that big, honest.
Boy, what a relief that is. And he'll be back tomorrow with another installment, so what we don't cover here we'll try and get to tomorrow, including some of the personal history. Am I correct in saying that only like the second or third gig that CSNN ever played was Woodstock? Second one.
Yep.
And
First
there you
time
are.
was Chicago Auditorium Theater, and the second one was Woodstock.
Thank you. We needed that. This is our second gig. This is the second time we've ever played in front of people, man. We're scared shitless.
How intimidated were you?
What really made us nervous was that, as you say, our heroes were standing right around behind us, the band in particular, whom we were just in awe of. And you know, Airplane and Dead and Janis and Jimmy and Sly and everybody that we thought was good. And they were all kind of going, okay, let's see it. Record was good. Let's see it. Can you do it? Come on. You know, and there was no malice, but it was like, okay, let's see it. You know, and we were going,
It's getting to the point where I'm no fun anymore.
sorry. Sometimes it hurts so badly I must cry out loud. I'm lonely, I am yours, you are mine, you are what you are. You make it hard.
When, you know, somebody like Robbie Robertson or Jimi Hendrix or, you know, Grace Slick or somebody comes up to you and says, man, that was so good. You know, you go, you know, it felt wonderful.
Joni Mitchell takes a pass to appear on the Dick Cavett show. She's not at Woodstock.
All true.
Then you help her write the song.
Well, no, she wrote it. She wrote it, and she wrote it with such accuracy and with such insight that you can only just put it, you can only credit it to the genius that she has as a songwriter, because she wasn't there. But she talked to all of us when we came back the next night, and she just caught it. She caught the essence of it. Didn't matter whether she was there or not, she nailed it.
So the sense in which you helped her is not helping to compose it, but just to background her properly.
We came back bubbling. I mean, you understand, it was a very strange circumstance. There you have 500,000 people. There were no robberies, no rapes, no murders, no fights, no big fights that I know of. That's impossible. Ask any law enforcement officer. Doesn't happen. Even at a religious gathering, doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. Just doesn't happen. You know, it was a great thing. It can't be duplicated, obviously. If you look at Altamont, it can't be duplicated at all. But
you were there too, right?
Yeah, yeah. Altamont was a nightmare. It was the exact 180 degrees out antithesis of Woodstock.
Why?
Vibe. It's just a totally different vibe. You know, different people.
Even before the beatings took place and the guy was killed, and I think Marty Balin got knocked out on stage by one of the Hells.
Marty
even before those incidents, could you tell it was different?
Marty got into an argument with the Hells Angel. That's like saying, oh, please, sir, would you knock me out? The same thing goes for the rest of it. I was the only person who stuck up for the Hells Angels, because I feel that if you don't want the tiger to eat your lunch guests, you don't invite the tiger to lunch. They were asked to do security. That's like saying, would you please come over here and hit some people?
But a guy got beaten to death with a pool cue, didn't he?
Well, now he had a gun. You know, I think he might have gotten knifed. I'm not sure how it happened. But they were, at that time, extremely violent people. And they were asked to do what they thought was a violent job. I never did get a joyous feeling there, ever. There was always tension in the air from the moment it started.
Story about you going to a party where Janis Joplin got into it with Jim Morrison. And the part about this story, now that's interesting enough, but the part about this story that knocked me over was the party took place at John Davidson's house. I mean, couldn't you find directions to Bert Convey's house? I mean, this is the most incongruous thing I've ever heard of. You guys and Janis Joplin and Jim Morrison.
I can't explain it. I know I was there. I know that's whose house it was. I know what happened, but why? You gotta. I'm not guilty, Your Honor. I didn't plan it.
What happened?
I don't have enough imagination to have planned something that bizarre.
What happened?
Okay. Well, now we have. This is going to be a little controversial. I never liked Jim Morrison at all, and I never liked the Doors. I didn't like them as a band. I didn't like their music. I personally did not like Jim Morrison. I didn't like the way he behaved or how he came across. I thought he was an obnoxious person. But he used to get into it with people when he would get drunk. And now, folks, you got to understand that a tremendous number of people, way more people than me, think he was a genius and very talented, and at least could credit him as being a very fine poet. I didn't, but I'm in the minority. He got into it with Janis. He used to get into it with people when he was drunk, and he got into it with Janis when it was the wrong person. Janis was, to say it politely, not shy.
Yeah.
And she belted him with a bottle of Southern Comfort and knocked him cold. Absolutely cold. Right on the floor.
Did the party continue apace, or they just shoved them aside?
Right on. Just went right on. Everybody was thrilled. Nice, good party. We like it.
I'm just trying to imagine John Davidson walking back in.
I'm not sure John was even there.
I'll take Janis Joplin to block, John. It just doesn't make it.
Yeah, I'm sure there were confrontations and combinations that were even more bizarre than that, man, that took place, but that was certainly one.
David Crosby is back tomorrow night. Now, this is the paperback version of his book, Long Time Gone, which has just come out. On January 16th, he went into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a member of the Byrds, and we'll continue talking about Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young and some of the personal ups and downs if you join us again here tomorrow night. Until then, see you later. Thanks for staying up later. We're back now with part 2 of our conversation with David Crosby, of course, of Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, and earlier from the Byrds. When a band reaches tremendous heights of creative excellence and public acceptance, like your band did, does it ultimately always unravel and go downhill, or could you say, if we had done this differently, that differently, we could have done the same sort of thing at that level of quality for 5, 6 more years?
There is an inherent instability. Witness the fact that there are only about 3 or 4 bands that can still play with the original people in them. The Grateful Dead, the Rolling Stones, and Crosby, Stills, and Nash. I don't think there are hardly any others. Performers have egos, large ones, or they would not get out there and go, "Hi, look at me." So that naturally they're in conflict with each other. The egos of the performers are in conflict with each other. Each guy is in competition with the others.
I'm not going to cop out an inch to fear. And you walked out 2 days in a row, you hypocrite. You pissed me off.
We used to, blow apart regularly, on a regular basis. And I wouldn't try to lay the blame at anybody's door. None of us are saints. I think we were lucky to get the music that we did made.
How much did your eventual collapse from drug use have to do with it?
A great deal. I think I was largely, or at least to a large degree, responsible for the breakup of the band. Because I made myself really almost incapacitated. I wasn't just smoking a joint. I was doing heroin and cocaine, and I was freebasing the cocaine, which is even more obsessive an addiction than the heroin is. And I pretty much, towards the end, was not a functional human being. I was as bad off as you can be and not die. And I think that...
Should you be dead, you think?
Oh, yeah,
By
several
all rights?
times over, sure. Overdoses on heroin, gunfights, seizures, seizures while driving.
Literal gunfights?
Yeah.
Okay, corral stuff?
No, I shot first. The other guy didn't have much chance, but the better living through chemistry, that's the life you lead when you are deeply involved with drugs.
There are several incidents where other musicians put themselves on the line, in effect, trying to push you out of the way of the moving train. Graham Nash has written at least a couple of songs about it.
Yep.
Wasted on the Way is about the group in general, but the focal point is your drug use and missed opportunities for friendship and creative excellence. And then there's a song called Into the Darkness that has a passage I'm going to read. I'm not going to trust it to memory. Your demons are dying to drag you away into the darkness.
Yeah, that was the most direct one. He dealt with it a little bit in another song called Glass and Steel, but that was the most direct one, Into the Darkness. And he was, you got to understand, he did that out of love. Neil wrote some stuff to me too, and as I said, all of these people who loved me at one time or another stood in front of me and said, David, you're killing yourself. You're not the guy you used to be. You are a nearly dead person, and I can't stand to watch it.
It got to a point, though, where several came over to your house, and they thought they were reaching you, and you're going into a...
Several doesn't describe it. I came home, and there was about 25 of my best friends there.
Who was there?
Oh, a lot of these same people I mentioned. Graham, Paul Kantner, Grace Slick, Jackson Brown, the guy that co-wrote my book with me, Carl Gottlieb, who's a longtime friend, Joel Bernstein, Nancy Brown, an enormous number of close friends.
And they thought they were getting to you, and then you snuck off and did some drugs anyway, right?
Got loaded again, yeah. I can only tell you that I was a truly, amazingly, addicted person, and completely in denial about it. I would say all the standard denial lines. I don't tell you how to run your life. Don't tell me how to run mine. If I want to go to hell in a handbasket, it's my life. I can do it. Well, my case is different. I can handle it. No, I'm not really as bad as that guy over there. These are all standard lines. If you read, any of the literature involved in 12-step recovery programs, you'll find all of this stuff just written down word for word.
Wasn't there an incident in Philadelphia where you apparently were so wasted you had to leave the stage in the middle of
sick,
of a
actually, is what I was. I was so sick because I couldn't get the drugs that I wanted, in this case heroin, that I thought I was going to fall down on stage. I was so dizzy and so, having had such bad stomach cramps and stuff, that I wandered off stage, went back, and kind of like just lay down on a couch, and I was almost unconscious. And Stephen came back and like poured a bottle of water on me and said, "Come on, man, you can't do this."
So these guys were still playing. You left in the middle of a performance, right? These guys are still playing.
That bad. Yeah. I'm not, I make no bones about it. It got really bad. That's why I'm so glad it's how it is now,
What would you say to your own kids or to people who admire your music? Because it isn't as simple as saying, good people don't do this. Because by all accounts, you're a good person, and you did some of the stupidest, self-destructive, uncaring to the people who loved you and stood by you stuff, yet you came out at the other end whole. And so it's a snappy thing like just don't do it. That doesn't
get
work. It doesn't ring true.
No, you can't just come in and say, just say no, and everything will be hunky-dory. That doesn't get it. And you can't... I don't know how to explain it, better than you... What I tell kids, what I told my own kid, and when I tell other kids, I go and talk to kids a lot about it. I tell them the truth about what happened to me. I tell them how innocuous and how innocent it seemed at the onset, which is one of the most, insidious things about it. And I tell them how the progression of it goes. That it starts off, it looks like a nice windy little road through the woods, and you can't see the end of the road where it goes over the cliff. And it definitely does go over the cliff.
Was the public humiliation, and that's really the only way to put it, when it reached its lowest point and you're spending Christmas of '85 in jail and you're doing nearly a year behind bars and there are pictures on every newscast and in every newspaper of you being led away, did it have to come to that before you could emerge maybe more whole now, it appears, than when you first went in?
I'm afraid so. I had tried going into hospitals repeatedly and failed. Sometimes I'd last one night, as in the case of the intervention. Sometimes I would last, as much as 3 or 4 weeks, which I did at Fair Oaks down here in New Jersey, and then I escaped, and it's a locked facility. Bright, Dave. And I think I was so severely addicted that I had to be forcibly separated from the possibility of getting drugs for long enough to wake up, which takes... In the case of somebody as severely addicted as I was, at least 6 months, more like a year. And that's what happened. When I got locked up, which is certainly, I don't recommend it as the way to do it. If you have a choice, go into treatment. Because when they do it in a Texas prison, it's like, their idea of treatment is, well, you got yourself this way. Let's see you get out of it, boy. How you feel now, rock star? And it was a very tough way to do it, but at the same time, it worked. By the time I got out of jail, I had written about 14 sets of lyrics and managed to get a hold of a guitar a couple of times in the band room and turn them into songs at least 2 or 3 times. I had written 3 screenplay ideas, By the time I was out, you know, a year, I had written that book with Carl and made an album of my own. By the time I was out a year and a half or 2 years, I had done a Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young album and an album of my own. And I can only draw one conclusion from that. You know, I stopped the drugs, the creativity came back. I mean, what else can I say? You know, there it is.
I don't, no, I don't, and I want you to understand. Oh, yes, I can still be the man you fell in love with. Oh, yes, I can. Oh, yes, I can.
It's about these three buddies, Steve, and they didn't know how to talk to one another for years. Wasted a lot of time and a lot of money. And then they finally made friends. Got rich. Was good.
And there's so much time to make up everywhere you turn. Time we have wasted on the way. So much water moving underneath the bridge. Let the water come and carry us away.
Is what was written in various places true about CSNY at their height? The greater the fights, the better the music that came out of it immediately
Very often.
afterwards?
It wasn't always like that. Sometimes it could be very detrimental, but there were times when we would be... I can remember a time in Philadelphia at the Spectrum where Stills and I were ready to go off on each other big time. I wanted to punch him right through into the next universe. And we went on and did one of the best shows we've ever done. What's
it like then on stage? Where does the energy go when you really want to deck somebody and all that baggage is out there?
It gets transmuted. I don't know how that happens, but it does. You get out there and you've got all this adrenaline pumping, and suddenly you are playing and you do something good, and you look over and you, instead of being angry at each other, you smile at each other because you know you just did it great, and it just goes whoosh, boom, right over the top like a wave breaking, and it's a wonderful feeling.
Is that a salve on the wound afterwards? Does it make it all right?
Sure,
or when you get off stage, do you say, all right, now I'm still pissed at you?
No. You come off saying, man, I'm really sorry I got in your face.
The musicality of Crosby, Stills, and Nash, I'm going to say CSNY. That way we'll get Neil in where he belongs, or where he doesn't, we'll just mix it all in. The musicality combined with some kind of social conscience made, you know, songs like Ohio and Woodstock and
Chicago.
Deja Vu and Teach Your Children. Those were anthems of the late 60s and the early 70s. How nostalgic for that time do you get?
Not very. The things I liked about it, you know, wouldn't be impossible to achieve now. I liked it that because, you know, the issues were so clear-cut. I mean, you looked at Nixon and you knew what was wrong. Because the issues were so clear-cut at that point, the society was very polarized, and people were willing to stand up and be counted. Well, I like that. I think that's a healthy, you know, infusion of strength into the democratic process. That makes people get out and vote. That makes people get out and stand up and be counted. And I think that's what makes this country work.
What was it like the day that Neil Young composed Ohio?
It was very intense. Neil was very intense. Somebody came back to this house that he and I were at for the afternoon, and we were sitting outside on a porch in the sun playing a little guitar, and they brought back Life magazine, which had that picture in it of the girl kneeling over the kid dead on the concrete, and with that expression on her face of, what? Why? You know, how could you do this? And I opened it to that, and I looked at it, and it shocked me, and I handed it to Neil, and it shocked him, and we just looked at it for a while, And then I don't know whether I handed him the guitar or he picked it up, but he picked up the guitar and he started playing, and he started writing. And he wrote a very simple song. And at the end of it, I started adding to it something. But it was powerful. And I got on the phone right away to Graham and said, we're coming to LA, book the studio. We've got to record this now.
Couple of loose threads here before we wrap up. I bring this up only because all parties concerned seem to be perfectly happy talking about it. Joni Mitchell was involved with both Graham Nash and yourself, and all three of you wrote songs about it. She wrote Willie, he wrote Our House, you wrote Guinevere, all about the same thing. And obviously you're all very good friends. Usually these things, I feel safe in saying, don't work out quite that way.
No, they don't. I credit it to all of us, you know, really caring about each other. We all loved each other, you know, very much, and these were not really very possessive relationships. When I went with Joan, I loved her a lot, and it was a wonderful time, you know. But I didn't expect to stay there, and neither did she. And when she went to Graham, my feeling was, you know, how could I, you know, not, you know, how could I be unhappy about two people that I really loved being together and being happy? I couldn't see anything wrong with that. And because I didn't feel I owned her in the first place. And we avoided most of the pitfalls there. It was very fortunate.
Interesting background about your father that I'm sure most people aren't aware of. He won the first Oscar for cinematography. He was the cinematographer on a movie in the early 30s called Taboo.
Was it the first one or one of the first ones?
I was told the first, but among the first. I never saw that movie, but all of us have seen High Noon, and he was the cinematographer on High Noon. So there's a show business background there.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean he appreciated what you did.
He did and he didn't. You know, he thought it was too loud. But he thought it was nice, you know, that I was at least doing something with my life. It's funny you should bring it up, actually, because they have just recently decided they found a good print of Taboo, the movie that he got the Academy Award for, and they're going to re-release it in art theaters and on a videotape, because it is such a classic film. It's one of the finest examples of early cinematography and one of the finest examples of early filmmaking.
Then he was blacklisted on some flimsy grounds during the McCarthy era, and he didn't even realize it, except he couldn't get work. Didn't realize it, as I understand the story, until they tried to hire him on From Here to Eternity, and somebody said, don't touch this guy.
They wouldn't let him be first camera. They would only let him be second unit. And it's weird. At that point during the McCarthy era, if you weren't a little bit to the right of Attila the Hun, you were, you know, a pinko. And my father, I don't think ever was anything more than a liberal Democrat, you know, but he did get, you know, tarred with the same brush, and had a long time of it being very difficult for him to get good work.
What are some of the projects you're working on now?
I've sung a lot on other people's records. You know, I mean, obviously we also, you know, Crosby, Stills Nash just did a big push on our record, Live It Up, which did well. And we did a long tour, 72 dates, that went well, and we were very, very happy about it. I have done this box set, you know, with the Byrds, which I think is a milestone. I'm really proud of it. And fortunately for us, it's doing very well. I've also sung with other people quite a bit. I sang on Bonnie Raitt's Nick of Time album. I sang on Bob Dylan's new record. I sang 2 songs on Phil Collins' But Seriously album. And he's a wonderful guy and one of the least affected musicians that I know by stardom. He's as big as you can get, and he just is as real as you can be. And that's been a great deal of fun. I've been trying to write more. I love to write screenplays, and so I've been working on that some. Since I've been in a wheelchair for the last month and a half, I've started to write a screenplay about a kid in a wheelchair. It's taught me an awful lot. I know that I certainly am going to want to do more work for, you know, the paralyzed vets and stuff, because I now understand what it's like to, if you want something that's 3 feet away from you, you have to get into a chair and get over there to get it, or ask somebody to help you to get it. It's really a lesson.
We really appreciate David Crosby, under somewhat adverse circumstances, still recovering from the motorcycle accident, spending 2 nights here with us. On January 16th, when he went into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a member of the Byrds, Don Henley gave the induction speech, but in doing some research, it could have been Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead. I don't know if you've heard this, but this is what he said about you. He said, David Crosby has never gotten the credit he deserves as a musician. He's an uncanny singer with as much vocal control as anybody I've ever seen or worked with. Pretty high praise.
Jerry, thanks.
We're glad you're back, literally and figuratively.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for spending the time with us.
It's been a pleasure.
We got to go. See you later.
Still be the man you fell in love